Black Scully on check. Got a little black and white hoodie on check. Welcome to another marvelous episode on today's docket. Before I get to that, shout out to the game. We just released our top 25 poll week 2. That's something we've been wanting to do for a while, so it's pretty dope. And we put each other on a really tight time crunch because, you know, I compute the top 25, so after everybody submits it, and we don't only use people from our brand, we use respected people around the industry who also submits the poll as well. And I kind of dropped the ball. It was supposed to come out a little bit earlier yesterday. I think I had fell asleep because I think it was Monday night. Monday was just a long day overall, so I had it computed. I just forgot to get it to Nino, and Nino does the graphic, and he always kills the graphic for the top 25. And kind of celebrating right now in our chat, you know, because people are ripping the poll. And that's kind of the idea of a poll. Like, you should feel a way about it. You know, if you hate it, and hate on it. We're cool with it. If you love it, love it. You know what I'm saying? And we've been getting mixed reviews, some hate, but it's all good because at the end of the day, CFB Nation going to be dunking on a lot of people, and we're going to be all right. So we're going to talk about the poll today. That's on today's docket. Far into the news segment, we're getting into some really interesting stories. A lot of it will kind of surround the events and the happenings of week 1. We're going to talk a little bit about Aidan Laughery, and this is seat as hot as some people think. We thought, you know, Skip Bayless was saying he has the hottest seat in America. No, he doesn't. No, you know, and I addressed that yesterday. Not going to address that again today, but he doesn't have the hottest seat in America. Now, is the seat a lot warmer than it was prior to Saturday, 3:30, you know, 6:30 or 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time? Yes, absolutely. Of course it is. We're also going to talk about in our Into News segment, Steve Sarkisian just admits, you know, frustration with how the performance was, you know, and you know, from his performance as well as Archman performance. We'll talk about that as well. Transfer QB portal, you know, takeover. We'll talk about some transfer portal quarterbacks who kind of had a good showing in week 1. And I think we'll kind of follow that throughout the season. Shout out to my dog, Nino. Nino just did a really great thing about true freshman quarterbacks. He actually has a metric that's going to be coming out. I'm not sure how soon. I know he needs some assistance with it, but it's almost there. I think a lot of it is, you know, when you have anything metric based, it's based on the algorithm. So I think he needs just a little bit of help with the algorithm. So once we get that out, it's really cool. I can't say the name of it. I can't tell you exactly what it is, but he has a metric that I think is going to be the key metric that a lot of people, when they start analyzing, you know, how talented a certain, I'm not even going to tell you what position it involves with, but this metric will be utilized a lot by scouts. I think it's a, you know, fantastic metric, but I do want to shout him out for his freshman list that he put out. It's definitely getting a lot of engagement. Also, we're going to talk about TCU, man. Their PR team, whoever's running their football, they're on one heck of a tear right now. So we're going to talk about that. Also, Nick Saban kind of reacts to the Alabama loss. We're going to also talk about that. And the old bowl coach, the old ball coach, Steve Spurrier. You know, we talk about him every week, and I love his reactions. I love his honesty. I think that's why I enjoy reacting to Steve Spurrier so much, just because you're going to get supreme honesty with him, and you might not want to hear it, and that's okay if you don't want to hear it. But one thing for sure, 2 things for certain, he's going to be honest whether you like it or not. Heisman Watch 2.0, we're going to look at that. And this is something we'll monitor every week. You know, 3.0 will be next week. And then also, it's something, a new thing that CFB Nation will be doing. We'll be, you know, releasing our Heisman Watch. I just got to create the form and then, you know, the format that we do it. And also, we got Governor Market Watch. We're going to talk about some of the teams that I'm up on and some of the teams that I'm down on. I've already told you guys about the CFB Nation Top 25 poll. And then we're doing a game preview. We want to get into this Illinois and Duke game. And I know there's other games that are going to get higher billing, like, you know, and deservingly so. Like Oklahoma and Michigan is going to be a heck of a ball game. I think I'm most excited for the Cyhawk game this week. But this Duke and Illinois game, it's in Durham. I don't think enough people are putting emphasis on this game because these are 2 teams with playoff aspirations, and whether you deem them playoff, you know, on the cusp or on the fringe playoff teams or not is really up to you. I look at both of these teams, and more so with Illinois. I think Illinois does have a shot to make the college football playoff as well. And I'm not underestimating Duke, even after a poor first half performance versus Elon. So we're going to talk about that game as well. We got a lot to talk about today. Governor College Football, hashtag go CFB. CFB Nation, your only college football destination. Let's get it. Governor of college football, we're going to recap ACC.
Hey, that's CJ
defensive minds. They have to be better on that side of the ball. Alrighty, into the news brought to you by the good folks of Bull Rush. Shout out to Bull Rush. Make sure you guys join. They got a competition right now. I don't know why. I think more people should be joining. You got an opportunity to win $100 if you have the best pick'ems. Like, go to the website, sign up for it. They have other competitions as well. NFL starts tomorrow for, you guys who are into the NFL. Not saying that I'm not. What I am saying is I love college football, and I will just leave it there. So, alrighty, so let's talk about this hot seat situation in Tuscaloosa. And Kalen DeBoer under fire after Alabama's 31-17 loss to Florida State. National voices are already questioning DeBoer if DeBoer survives year 2. Pete Thamel notes that the Tide can have their decision made by November, with LSU looming. A $63 million buyout makes it complicated, but Bama fans are restless, and the shadow of Saban looms large. I look at this situation, and you look at a program that has been so successful for the better part, of a decade. When I talk about successful, I'm talking about, not a decade, of a quarter century. You look at how successful this team has been, especially since Nick Saban has gotten there. Like, you're expected to win. Imagine that type of pressure. I don't think people truly understand or can kind of quantize what that type of pressure means. That means that you are expected to not only compete, you're expected to compete at the highest level in the conference with the most difficult gauntlet, whether you like it or not. The SEC has the toughest gauntlet, especially with this new format. But let's put that to the side. Even with the old format, they have the toughest gauntlet. That's why a lot of these teams schedule cupcake games during their non-con, because they know how difficult their gauntlet is. So not only are you expected to compete at a very high level in the SEC, you expect to win the SEC. You expect to be in the, back in the day, BCS National Championship. You expect to be in the college football playoff. You expected to win the college football playoff. The expectation in Tuscaloosa is through the roof. I don't think I can name another program in this country where the expectations are higher. There isn't another program you can name. You can say maybe, the team in Athens, but, before Kirby Smart got there and Mark Richt was there, we was like, wow, we have a lot of good teams, but we just can't seem to get over the hump, right? Before Kirby got there. And even though the expectations have been risen by Kirby Smart, those expectations in Athens, it's neck and neck. We're talking about something like that. But at the same time, the expectations in Alabama are through the roof. I think we treated Kalen DeBoer's first year in Tuscaloosa as if he went 6-6. Because 9-3 is like going 6-6. 9-3, no playoff berth, you went 6-6. That's how they deem you, and that's how they're going to treat you. You 100% went 6-6 your first year there. Even though you went 9-3, you went 6-6 because those expectations are super high. And so I've seen a lot of conversations as it pertains to this. You look at this team, you look at their ability to recruit. They've been able to recruit, it's Tuscaloosa. The resources are plentiful. Football is king down there in the deep, deep South, especially when you talk about the Southeastern Conference, and especially when you're talking about a city like Tuscaloosa. So we look at this team, we look at the expectations, we look at the fact that they're able to recruit. And one of the things that I've seen attack recently is, did they spend enough money via NIL? And another narrative that is out there, I'm not saying this, the governor isn't saying this at all, but it's a narrative out there, and it's my job to report the news, that now that everybody can kind of pay players legally, that now Alabama is falling behind in that regard. They still got a lot of blue chippers on their roster. They were decently active in the portal, but you guys just went from the greatest coach of all time to a really good coach. Kalen DeBoer is a really good coach, make no mistake about it. But I think a lot of our issues it wasn't that they lost, in Tallahassee. It was how they lost. It was how they lost the, war of attrition on the line in the scrimmage. It was the lack of effort that players showed, the lack of heart. Bro, you can't be around me. Like, that type of effort that they showed, the lack of hustle, the lack of fight, the lack of dog, you can't be around me. A lot of y'all don't truly understand the environment I grew up in. I try to paint the picture for you, but until you've been in that environment, until you've been in the situations that we've, had to be in and had to face, you will never understand it. You won't. Like, you know what I'm saying? Moon has a better understanding because when he came up here for a game a couple years ago, we took him around the neighborhood. He's like, whoa. You know what I'm saying? So he has a better understanding, but most people will never have an understanding because they've never been there. And they don't know what it's like to grow up in a place where, yeah, there's no gangs, there's no Bloods and Crips, but can't nobody just ride on your block without people getting phone calls. Hey, this car rolled down the block once or twice. You know who this is? That's the way it works. That's how politics work where we grew up at. Right? So, and I said that to say, like, if you have no heart, you had no dog, at any given time growing up where I grew up at, you just walking down the street can end up in an altercation. You could be walking down the street minding your business. Somebody say something to you, and you got your name is everything. You got to fight for respect. That's just the way it is. It's just the way it is. It's the way it's always going to be around there. So, it wasn't that they lost. It was the way they lost, the war of attrition on the line of scrimmage, and then we all seem to play with the lack of hustle. So yes, it's killing the board seat warming up. Yes, when we start hearing things about the buyout of $63 million, yeah, the boosters and donors and people, you know, who really care about this program. You think Tuscaloosa can find $63 million? They absolutely could. But they got to show a better performance, man. You know, Alabama don't accept losing as is. But the fact that you lost the way you lost, I think, is trouble. Steve Sarkisian admits frustration with Arch Manning and kind of the way he called the game. You know, the Longhorns only mustered up 7 points of offense, and they were able to get in deep into Ohio State territory a few times. It just didn't work. And I think a lot of us, including myself, that's why I put myself on this L segment yesterday. You know, we didn't give Matt Patricia enough credit. I just said, alrighty, Jim knows who I think is the best defensive coordinator in all of college football. There's some other ones I like too, but, you know, for my money, if I had to say who's the best, it's absolutely Jim knows. And Matt Patricia, I guess the thing I didn't consider, I just look at the nuances of college football. You got wider hashes. So if you're on the short side of the field and you got, you know, trips or a bunch to the wide side of the field, there's more area to cover. It's a little bit more difficult to cover that area. So if it's a bunch to the wide side, they're running a flood concept on a wide side, and, you know, let's say you're in a cover 2 or you're in a cover 3, you have to adjust the way you play it. So that's when I say nuances. There's just nuances in college football that is different. One thing that I didn't expect is all of the years of Matt Patricia coaching in the NFL level, the ability for him to disguise his coverages was elite. Absolutely elite. And that was one of the things that Steve Sarkisian said about Matt Patricia, that he did an outstanding job disguising his coverages. But, you know, Manning finished 17-30, 170 yards and a touchdown and an interception, of course. Failed, you know, quarterback sneak. I think a lot of people are just too quick to judge. And college football is something that we do because it's such a short season, right? And, you know, we spend all of the offseason building up hype. We start looking at teams. We start analyzing things. We start collecting intel and data and try to figure out, alrighty, who's the team that nobody's talking about that I want to start talking about? And you start digging through the crates to really find out, like, who's going to be legit. So when a lot of us start to, you know, figure out who's going to be legit, you know, heavy is the head that wears the crown, and Arch Manning just happens to bear the last name Manning, you know, in his last name, and it is what it is. But I think a lot of people overreacted. It's one game. It was versus the national champions. I think all of us underestimated, you know, I've said this, you know, I think I've said this since last season. Even last season, I thought Caleb Downs was the best player in college football. And I still think he's the best player in college football now. That doesn't change. I know a lot of people think it's Jeremiah Smith. Yeah, probably offensively, absolutely. But the best overall player in college football, for my money, is Caleb Downs. So shout out to Matt Patricia, man. And Steve Sarkisian will figure it out. He's one of the best play callers in all of college football. And I just think it's one of those things. It's a long off season with college football. We're talking hype. We can't wait to see what Arch Manning is going to look like in this offense. And then when we're disappointed, it's like when people hype up a movie, right? I probably shouldn't admit this on camera, but I haven't seen the movie Sinners yet, right? And so many people have hyped it up, so my expectations are through the roof. So if I see it and it's a good movie, but it don't meet the expectations that, you know, people telling me they went to see it 3 and 4 times, then, you know what I'm saying? But it also works in reverse. When people say, oh, you about to watch that? That movie's terrible. All right, well, you know, if it's terrible in the first 15, 20 minutes, I turn it off. But I end up enjoying a movie because of the, you know, expectations versus reality. So let's talk about this transfer QB takeover, portal stars who shined in week 1. We got Thomas Castellanos, man. He validated his trash talk. And for me, I'm not a guy that's big on bulletin board material. If I'm a coach and you're a player on my team and you give another team bulletin board material, bro, we gonna have to squabble. You gonna have to see me. I just might snuff you. And it's okay. You just might gotta get snuffed because you shouldn't be giving nobody bulletin board material. I believe the best approach is to compliment, and keep it moving, bro. You can big up your team, but you don't gotta talk about another person's team. But maybe through the tape that Castellano seen, he said, yo, that's not the same Bama. Maybe he truly felt that way, and he showed it. And I was, and I gave him crap for it. I gave him a lot of crap for it, and a lot of us did too. And because, I have sources that were really close to, to the program that he used to play for. And, some of the things that I was saying, I'm like, yo, buddy's tweaking. Is he even going to start in Tallahassee? My apologies, Thomas Castellanos. Hey, I called myself out yesterday. If you don't believe it, watch yesterday's show. So Carson Beck in Miami, I'll do Notre Dame. And you guys know I have not been high on Miami. I haven't. But when I was analyzing that game, and shout out to Top Dog and my dog, Road Dog, man. Road Dog is one of those people that I met in his space, and I really appreciate him. Real genuine dude. He's always showing a lot of love. And I find that a lot in this space. Of course, there's people who hate and do a bunch of other stuff. I don't really pay attention to that. It don't bother me. Like, the city that I'm from, it just will never bother me. You know what I'm saying? Like, that will never get to me. But it's always good with people like Road Dog. That's my dog, for real. And he's showing a lot of love. I don't know what's going on with this computer. It's been acting up all morning, so bear with me if it's dropping frames and stuff. It's just tripping. It's probably time to get a new one. Like, the lifespan of the computers that I use, because I put a lot into them. About 2 years at this point. But yeah, so I don't know. Like, that's where I'm at with that. So Miami, but I did think Miami would beat Notre Dame. That was one of the calls that I made, and it felt good because I was wrong a lot this week. So it felt good to be right about that game. So yeah, Carson Beck, yes, I think he shined in that matchup as well. Jackson Arnold, dude, he ran wild in Waco, bro. Left Oklahoma, and it's interesting because he left Oklahoma because Steph Latrell's offense just didn't work in Norman. Let's be 100% honest about it. It didn't work at all in Norman. And the fact that it didn't work, and I think he was able to go somewhere with an elite play caller like Hugh Freeze, and that's not a dig at Steph Latrell. I do think they have a better play caller in Oklahoma now with Ben Arbuckle. I'm happy for him. Neither team, and I said this, and I stand by this, and some of y'all may get upset. I don't care, bro. Like, this is my opinion. Like, I don't care if you get upset about my opinion. Neither team overwhelmingly impressed me. They didn't. Jackson Arnold players impressed me. Yes, Jackson Arnold impressed me, but Sawyer Robinson impressed me. I thought he played well. I thought we wasted, him and Jake Spavital's time. But did Auburn impress me? No. Baylor moved the ball up and down the field against Auburn. Auburn, didn't really have to pass much because of the defense that, Baylor, decided to stay in. But no, am I overly impressed with either team? No, there's not a lot of teams I'm overly impressed with after week one. Florida State is one of them. Because of my expectations were low. My expectations for Auburn were already high. My expectations for Baylor were already high. So was I overly impressed with you? No, I'm not. But who did overly impress me was Devin Dampier in Utah. That kid is phenomenal. He's worth the price of admission. I was up late working on content like always, making sure Moon was good. Moon does so much work on our website. And I don't really think he gets the credit he deserves for the work he does on our website. Speaking of our website, make sure you check out our website, thecfbnation.com. The work that he does on there, the coverage, the reason that we're able to get into a lot of the schools, and a lot of work that we all do matters, but the work that he does is the reason why we get into a lot of these schools. One, because he talks to them, and that's not just it, because a lot of schools want to see what's going on with your website. And are you covering our team? And are you covering the nation? We cover the nation. We that CFB Nation, the nation in that part of it, we mean it. And we go everywhere. This week, we've already been credentialed for a handful of games. We're just trying to figure out where we're going. Maybe in College Park, maybe in Northwestern. I don't know. But we've been credentialed for a handful of games. So, we'll figure it out. I think today is credential day, so we should get some more in the email. So we'll figure it out after the day. But, yes, I was really impressed with David Dampier. Really was. And Sean Mateer, he broke school records in his debut. I think you have to put him in the Heisman race after that debut, but if you've been watching this channel, for a while, you know that we were already high on John Mateer. I think my boy Boomer calls him Moneyline Mateer now, and I love that. Like, that's a fantastic name, and it's going to stick with him. And if you know the meaning behind it, cool. If not, it is what it is. Go figure it out. But yeah, so I like the fact that he's going to be up there in the thick of things. And North Carolina's 33rd team humbled in Chapel Hill. Bill Belichick's debut was abysmal. I mean, they put the ab in abysmal. It was terrible. And I knew TCU would go in there and win the game handedly. But when I say handedly, by like 10 or more points, just because, when you get around teams during media days, that's where, some of your excitation grows for teams. Like, I knew Nebraska wasn't going to blow out Cincinnati last week. Being around them at Big 12 media days, I just knew it. They had this aura about them. And Cincinnati, while their passing game was horrible, they did have some opportunities to, send that game into overtime. But yeah, so being around TCU, my dog Bud Clark, I interviewed Bud Clark. Bud Clark had a pick 6. There were a lot of scouts there to see him. So shout out to my dog Bud Clark. But I'm really impressed with this team. Josh Hoover was so impressive. So impressive. And I think he's one of the most media trained quarterbacks that I've ever been around. And, quarterbacks are supposed to be the most media trained on your football team, of course, other than your staff. But that kid was impressive versus UNC. And, the stars were aligning for UNC, man. Night game, Monday night, nationally televised. Lawrence Taylor is in the building. Michael Jeffrey Jordan is in the building. I think Stephen A. Smith was in the building. And ouch. Hands and feet, ladies and gentlemen. Hands and feet placed upon them. It was bad. It was really bad. And so TCU's media team, was they had a roasting session. Skip Bayless got roasted. Michael Lombardi got roasted. I'm telling you, these college football PR teams, I think they do nasty work at the NFL level. I think there's some stipulations you have in the NFL level. At the collegiate level, they don't have as many stipulations. So it's a roasting session for sure. So shout out to their PR team. Nick Saban, his reaction to the Alabama loss. On College Football Countdown, Saban said the Tide were dominated in the trenches, but reminded fans that teams make their biggest leap from week 1 to week 2. Now, when Saban is talking, I'm trying to decipher a few things. The sincerity in what he's saying, but I take him as a very genuine and a very sincere individual. Is this coach speak? But I think in the grand scheme of things, let's just look at it as face value. From week 1 to week 2, teams make their biggest jump. Yes, because all you've seen all summer, you looked at your footage from the prior year if you're a returning coach or even if you're a new coach, and you also look at the footage from fall camp. And you probably shouldn't be looking at spring camp because you got more installs for fall camp. That's all you have to look at. But now they have tangible tape, and if these players aren't running gashers the entire week, then we have a problem. We 100% have a problem. And somebody had a take on Ryan Williams. I thought that was so great. They said at times he looks like he's scared to go across the middle. He said if you feel a way about it, go watch the film. They ain't wrong. That's all I'm going to say about that. So Steve Spurrier criticizes Texas' handling of Arch Manning. Spurrier wasn't impressed with how Sarkisian and Texas handled Manning's struggles. He pointed out, on his podcast that Arch was left to sit with teammates instead of getting direct coaching. You hear that? The old ball coach. You're going to get what? Direct coaching. Jesse Palmer, what were you thinking? Doug Johnson, what were you thinking? Danny Warfel, what were you thinking? What did you see? You have to have tangible answers. You know what I'm saying? But everybody has different learning styles. So this is my only kind of rebuttal to Coach Spurrier. This is a new age. And my apologies if you get offended by what I'm about to say next. But this is a new age. And I know we are, in the age of mental wellness and, being who you want to be, that's cool. Some of y'all are soft. You are. Like, you got to watch what you say on the internet because of cancel culture. Cool. It is what it is. But when I was growing up, people said whatever they wanted to say, and you had to deal with it. So you either was going to deal with it, laugh it off, or you was going to fight. That's how it was back in the day. That's how 100% it was, back in the day. So And my rebuttal to, Steve Spurrier is this: like, when you were coaching, you can be aggressive. You know what I'm saying? You could be like that with your quarterbacks. We don't know what Arch Manning's criticism style is. He may take it better, in post and not in the moment. In the moment, he might want to be left alone. And sometimes I think as these new coaches learning to deal with people, Lane Kiffin don't care. Lane Kiffin is the anomaly. He don't care. You come in there with some mental illness bull crap, he gonna tell you get off his team. We know how Lane Kiffin is, but that will be my only rebuttal. But I do agree with Steve Spurrier. You got to coach these, quarterbacks up. Like what did you see? Hey, we called the scissors concept here. Did you see the corner route? He was naked. He was wide open. Did you see it? Well, why didn't you throw it? This is the type of coaching that is needed. But we don't know his know his critique style, because this is a different era. And I know a lot of y'all gonna be like, yo, Governor, you're tripping. Like, for real? No, I'm serious. I'm as serious as in heart attack. We don't know his criticism style. This is the new era of college football. That was a long into the news segment. My apologies, but I enjoyed talking about that. Let's get into our next segment. We're gonna react. Alrighty, so this is our Heisman Watch 2.0 video, and not sure why it didn't work. But either way, it's neither here nor there. So we're going to look at some of the quarterbacks that matter for our Heisman 2.0 video. I'll try to pull something else up here. Is it not there? It's just not popping up. All right, cool. That's neither here nor there. Let's get to it. So week 1 is in the books, and we're about to, and when it, comes with the first shakeup, we know we got a bunch of shakeups in week 1. It's just the way it is. So let's talk about the Heisman race. Every week we'll look at the Heisman race, and we'll talk about some teams that didn't perform well, but I still think these players are being the thick of things. Okay, Klubnik on a really big stage, Battle of Death Valley. They were, in Death Valley East in Clemson, South Carolina. They had an opportunity to go win the game down the stretch. Now, I don't blame him solely for why they won the game. They didn't make any adjustments. And for all of the praise and credit that I gave Garrett Riley, this off-season, or what y'all call the off-season, because we don't celebrate the off-season here. For all of the praise that I gave him, I was extremely unhappy with the adjustments that they made in that game. Like, LSU went in at halftime. They decided, hey, we're going to man everything up. We'll keep everybody in front of us, and we're going to have a spy. And for some reason, and I know Williams wasn't out there. The receivers were struggling to get separation. And it just wasn't a good look. I can't blame that all on Cade Klubnik. I know that's what some people are going to do. I'm just not going to do that. Some of that is on coaching as well. But yes, so of course his stock will be down for sure. Jeremiah Love, 33 yards on 10 carries is crazy. And just 26 yards receiving. But the reason that I thought Miami was going to win, because I figured they were going to dare C.J. Carr to beat him. And not that C.J. Carr played terrible, but, I guess my question is, they're 0-1, you don't panic. They're not in a conference. So Notre Dame has little wiggle room as it pertains to the college football playoff. They really do. So now they got to, essentially, I don't want to say essentially run the table, but essentially run the table, if that makes sense. And, are they comfortable with C.J. Carr being the guy? That's my question for them. And, Jeremiah Smith, 6 catches, 43 yards, a couple drops, not terrible, but it wasn't Heisman level either. But I think it was just week 1 jitters. He'll be ready the next week. Archman, and of course, we talked about him great detail earlier. He just had a horrible game. But, some of the people who stood out, of course, Jackson Arnold, 137 yards, 2 touchdowns, marching to Waco and left Waco with a victory. You got to shout out to them for that. Huge win by them. I do have a couple of things I'm concerned about with Auburn, but it shall play itself out. When, once they get to SEC play, they'll figure those things out. I know the wide receiver core, one of the best in the country. They'll figure that out. Defense, though. Defense. They did a great job against the run, other than the Bryson Washington run that was called back. But they struggled in pass. They really did. And there was a couple drops that game, too. Michael Trigg had a couple of drops. Even though he had a big game, he had a couple drops. Haynes King went to Boulder. They got a victory, and that was after a game that they had 3 turnovers, like early in that game. And I thought Colorado squandered so many opportunities to really take, control of that game. Caden Salter and Dion even said it himself. Everybody's talking about how he had opportunities to run and he wasn't running. So I think with them putting that in his ear, expect him to have close to 100 yards rushing this week. I'm just saying. Devin Dampier played outstanding, played electric. We talked about him already. Carson Beck, he looked comfortable in that offense, man. 205 yards, 2 touchdowns. He was calm. It was a statement win for Miami, and expect him to produce in that system. It's just I'm waiting for, Miami should get off to a pretty high start. I'm just waiting for those moments where they're in close games with teams they have no business being in close games with. That is my fear with them. Drew Allen, Penn State, 22 of 26, 217 yards, 2 tutties. Yes, he belongs up there. The North Stellars, bro. Stats don't tell the whole story. You guys know I was at that game. That kid is impressive. To me, right now, he's number one on my Heisman watch. For me personally, he's number one. And I guess I'm kind of giving away, when I go and do my ranking. And even though he only threw for 209 yards, and even though they were struggling with Virginia Tech, and even though he got sacked 4 times, there was just a couple plays that he made that he is the only guy in this country that's capable of making. It's him. The list says Lenore Sellers, no one else. That's what the list says. This kid is electric. I'm telling you, it's one thing to see it on television. It's a whole nother thing to see it from, being in the bleachers because you're getting a better look. It's one thing to see it from the field. This kid is incredible. The Cam Newton comparisons may be valid. That's all I'm going to say. I'm going to leave the hyperbole there. John Mateer, we already talked about him. And Garrett Nussmeier, that was, my favorite to win the Heisman, into this year. They got a big win. 2 outstanding defenses. Their offense will be better as the season progresses. So, like I said, so here's the vibe. Nussmeier, Mateer set an early pace. But like I said, Lenore Sellers, if I'm voting right now and I'm giving it to him, but Sellers did give us that Heisman moment, bro. That Heisman moment where he just refused to be tackled and you truly saw his strength. Them South Carolina boys is built differently. I'm telling you that. But let's go ahead and get to our top 25 ranking. Alrighty, so this is CFB Nation's top 25. And shout out to my boy Nino. Once again, I apologize to you behind closed doors. I apologize publicly. My bad. I got him this a little late. He just got it probably 4-5 hours earlier, which would have probably made a difference for him, but it's neither here nor there. Here's our top 25. I normally go 25-1. Let's celebrate who's up at top. Ohio State number 1. Champs show why they're still a champs. Defense suffocated Arch Manning. Shutting out Texas late. And of course they scored, late. But Julian Sayin delivered a big touchdown throw. And, winning 14-7 in a heavyweight bout, with some analysts believe that, Texas will march into Columbus and do what they did to Ohio State, what they did to Michigan a year ago. So Ohio State being that one, I like it. It's well balanced. And the way it works, every team, it's 1 through 25. You put your teams in and it's weighted. That's how it works. It's weighted. And, this is how we come up with the top 25. Penn State, they're 1-0. They're number 2 business-like 38-3 win over Nevada. Drew Allen was sharp, 22 of 26, 217 yards, 2 tutties. I like Penn State a lot. You guys know how I feel about them. You know how I feel about their offensive coordinator, Andy Kolonecki. You know how I feel about their receiver core. Love that Jim Knowles is anchoring that defense. Penn State will be fine. They're going to be up there in the thick of things. And I did vote Ohio State number 1. They be the number 1 team. They should be number 1. It is what it is. LSU, number 3, and they got room to be higher. To march into Death Valley East, win the game. And, they had 1-0 on their shirts. This is a message that they have been talking about all off season because it had been a knock on Brian Kelly. It's something that I talked about. Like, when are you going to win a week 1 game, brother? They won one this week, and they won a damn good one this week. Excuse my French. So, yeah, LSU at 3, I like it. Georgia at 4. No drama. The Dogs handle, their opener comfortably, flexing their depth. And Gunnar Stockton looked comfortable. He looked comfortable on Mike Bobo's offense. So, I do like that. Texas in at number 5. I don't agree with things that we've seen in the AP poll in the past. Like, Florida is the example I always use. Back in 2022, they were, dogs when they went in to play Utah. A lot of people thought Utah would win that game. They won it. They went from not ranked to 12th. I'm not a fan of that. Nor am I a fan the other way around. We just had a heavyweight bout. The loser of that game shouldn't drop a whole bunch of spots. I think Texas was 2, and our introductory rankings, maybe 3. They're at 5 now. I'm okay with that. Oregon 1-0. Ducks rolled in their season opener. Explosive offense, defensive speed, and I like where the Ducks at for now. Miami 1-0. We talked about Carson's, back debut, certified success. I think this is a more quarterback-friendly system in Coral Gables than the system that he was in Athens. 205 yards, 2 touchdowns. I'm cool with that. Clemson at number 8. Shouldn't fall too much. Like I said, this is something I think you'll see us be consistent with as voters. We're not. It's not. One side, and then it's going to swing crazy after just 1 week of college football. It takes weeks to really develop and figure this thing out. If you feel like a team isn't on here or a team isn't high enough, like Iowa State currently isn't high enough, Iowa State will have, guess what, 10 more opportunities to make that happen. Auburn will have 11 more opportunities to make that happen. The bracket will figure itself out. The top 25 will figure itself out. We're just not going to be quick to jump the gun with it. And I think that's what you're going to get with our poll. You're going to get extreme consistency. Even if you don't agree with it, you're going to say, hey, at least CFB Nation, 1 week isn't going to make them overreact. Even though we do have a show called Overreaction Monday. We're not going to overreact. We're going to fill this poll appropriately, and it will work itself out. That's what I like to say to everybody. It will definitely work itself out. Arizona State coming in at number 9. 1-0. Sam Levitt and company look polished in their opener. Arizona State, man, it's funny. Kenny Dillingham is he's one of those coaches, man. First day of fall camp, he's losing his mind. First day of fall camp. Imagine losing your mind first day of fall camp. Because they showed a lack of passion. He said it was good practice. They just didn't have any passion. He said somebody's got to go 3-9. We can go 3-9. I like that. I like that energy. I like that energy 100%. Alrighty, coming in at number 10, Notre Dame. Like I said, just because they lost in a good game. It was a heavyweight bout. Did they look good? No. They did not. But, it is what it is. They'll figure it out. Let's see where they're at week by week. They got 11 more games, Let's not overreact off of 1 week. South Carolina 1-0. I wasn't overly impressed with South Carolina until late in the game. Because Virginia Tech, and even though their offensive line towered over Virginia Tech was getting the Sellers. I mean, they even got a safety. They had 4 or 5 sacks that game. But, Sellers, clutch moments, he made it happen. Nick Harbor looks the part this year. When I tell you Nick Harbor certainly looks the role this year, he absolutely looks the role. And coming up next, for everybody who just jumped in here, we do have a lot of people in here today. We are going to do the game preview of Illinois versus Duke, so stay tuned for that if you're a fan of Illinois or Duke. We will do that preview. So South Carolina looked the part. I'm telling you, just being at that field, Nick Harbor is a legit 6'5". That dude looked like he was built in a lab, and you could tell he spent all season playing football. Nothing with track. That dude looks the part. Expect him to have a breakout year. Expect him to 100% have a breakout year. And coming in number 12, Illinois. I'm high on Illinois. Jalen's an Illinois fan. It doesn't surprise me that Illinois is high on our poll. It just doesn't. But if you look at their team, you look at a guy like Gabe Jacas, you look at Luke Altmeyer, who doesn't get enough credit for what he has done last year, his ability to win in clutch moments. He don't get enough credit for that. But I like Illinois a lot. Coming in at number 13, Florida. Physical up front, opportunistic. I told you guys, I think this is the best offensive line in the country. I like what they have in running back. They got a running back room kind of by committee, but Ball is the leader, but I like Jackson as well. Wide receivers, you got freshman Wilson, and you got the savvy vet Eugene Wilson. I like what they have. I really like this team. DJ Lagway, right? I've seen a lot of great conversation about DJ Lagway. I'm not going to get into that, but I've seen a lot of great conversation. Oklahoma, 1-0. John Mateer looked apart, bro. 392 yards, 3 tutties. And they rolled against Illinois State, 35-3. I'm sorry, I think it was Western Illinois, actually. True test comes this Saturday versus Michigan. The true test comes this Saturday versus Michigan. It is in Norman. I want to see how both of these teams play, because I believe that, Bryce Underwood looked good this week as well. SMU, 1-0. It was to be expected. They were putting up points in bunches. I don't know if you guys know, our director, Mike, is an SMU fan. So he was, in here, watching the SMU game going crazy. He loves SMU, actually. Coming in at number 16, Texas A&M, one of the teams I think that was so difficult to calibrate, heading into this season. But they look pretty good. The trenches looked improved. I'm happy to see my dog Ruben Owens back. So, yeah, Texas A&M, man. I'm happy about them. We already talked about Michigan. Michigan's coming in at number 17. Number 18, Rocky Top, man. Tennessee, my apologies, man. My apologies, man. Tennessee looked good. They did. Little concerns about defense. Joey Aguilar looked apart. You know, to drop 45 on Syracuse, I thought that Fran Brown and company would be more prepared heading into that game, and they weren't. I thought they would get added intel from, like Kirby Smart. I don't know. I really don't know. Tennessee, I got to see how you guys look in SEC play, but you guys deserve to be in this top 25. I've been highly critical of you guys, but you guys deserve to be here. Coming in number 19, Texas Tech. Raiders look sharp and physical. I got to see what's going on with Baron Morton. I believe he did have an injury, but I think he'll be okay. But the Red Raiders, they spent a lot of money. Defensively is what I'm looking at. They're going to score points. Even, Zach Kittley is, in paradise right now, in Boca Raton, coaching Florida Atlantic. Texas Tech, that defense. If that defense can look the part this year, I think they're going to be pretty good. Alabama at 20. We had Alabama in our top 10. Ty Simpson was my spring game MVP. I don't know what happened. I don't have no words for it. I don't have any explanations for it. I think all that I can say as it pertains to this game is what happened. It'd have been one thing if they'd have lost by like 1 point. I could be like, okay. But to get physically punched in your mouth and a team tell you, oh, yeah, you ain't the same without Nick Saban. You go in there like, you don't wear that. When you put that jersey on, you don't wear it with pride. Man, that's what I say, man. I always go to what I know back in the day, bro. You can't do this these days. But defensive coordinators will put bounties on people. Let Greg Williams have been, this is no disrespect to Kane Womack because I believe he's an outstanding defensive coordinator. Let Greg Williams have been that defense coordinator for this game. Castellano said what? And even though this ain't a lot of money to these players because they all got paid, I got $800 whoever hit them, take them out the game. Pinned it on the locker room. I'm telling you, man. I'm telling you, that back in the day, though. Quarterbacks shouldn't get away with talking to you. That's like saying something about your manhood, man. Quarterbacks shouldn't get away with that. But for them to pull it off and, for Thomas Castellanos to be proven right, yeah, they're not the same without Nick Saban. We can say that. We expected a natural drop-off, but they look bad. They didn't even look like a top 25 team this past weekend. Ole Miss coming in at number 21. Super explosive. Lane Kiffin. I don't think he gets enough credit for being a quarterback developer, bro. I really don't. Because once upon a time, and even though he can't take credit for Luke Altmeyer, once upon a time, right? Jackson Dart, you can take credit for him. But once upon a time, I didn't like Jackson Dart. Once upon a time, I didn't like Luke Altmeyer. But this guy doesn't get enough credit for developing quarterbacks. I think Cliff Kingsbury is one of the best in the business when it comes to developing quarterbacks. That's at the collegiate level or at the professional level. But Ole Miss look good. Yeah, I know what you guys going to say. They supposed to look good. But, all teams that were supposed to look good didn't look good. This team coming in at 22 was one of them. Wasn't impressed with their victory. I wasn't. It is what it is. Utah, they looked outstanding. Utah at 23, I like it. Iowa State should be higher on this list, but guess what? They got more games to go show how good they are. And they got one big one this week in the South game. It's in Ames. Let's see how good they are. Auburn coming in at number 25. I said it earlier. They have 11 more games to show how good they are. Do they deserve to be in the top 10 based on their victory in Waco? Absolutely. Absolutely. Others receiving votes. We got Florida State, 26. Tommy Castellanos, I said earlier, he backed up his talk. We got Louisville at 28, USC at 29. I'm just naming some notables. Georgia Tech at 30. These are just teams receiving votes. BYU is receiving votes. Nebraska is receiving votes. I wasn't overly impressed with Nebraska. Just being honest. Wasn't overly impressed with Duke. We'll talk a little bit more about Duke earlier. Mizzou is another team receiving votes. Navy, South Florida receives some votes. Kansas receives some votes. Tulane looked dang going good versus Northwestern. Iowa received votes. So we're going to hurry up and do Governor's Market Watch, and then we're going to get into our game preview. Waco, Texas. Friday night lights deep in Big 12 country. Alrighty. So the game preview is on this screen. We're going to get to the game preview. But before we get to the game preview, I'm going to just do a quick Governor Market Watch. Teams that I'm buying stock in and why. Tennessee is one of those teams I'm buying stock in. Don't want to overreact to one game. But if there's a team that I just thought completely dropped the ball this offseason, I thought it was them. But hats off to their staff. You know, their defense didn't look outstanding, but still hats off to Tim Banks. Arion Carter played really well in that game. That was one of the guys I predicted to have a breakout season this year. Hats off to Joya Hazel. Joya Aguilar looked comfortable. He looked extremely comfortable. And hats off to Josh Heupel. I think a lot of times, and I think behind the scenes, a lot of coaches are elated for Tennessee. We're not going to let this quarterback dictate what we can do, how we can do. And I think a lot of teams and a lot of coaches are like, hey, if you don't want to, look what Tennessee was able to do. They lost Nico and they still winning games. So I think a lot of coaches behind the scenes are high-fiving Tennessee like, great job, right? Buying Tennessee stock. It's official. I'm buying it. I am. Utah stock, you know, it wasn't that they beat UCLA. It was how they beat UCLA. I had UCLA as a Fringe Bowl eligible team. They didn't look like that the other day. And though I know people are going to troll on the internet and blame a lot of this on Nico, that wasn't on Nico. They just didn't play well as a team. Didn't tackle well defensively. The Fano brothers both had an outstanding game. The Fano brothers both had an outstanding game that game. And Devin Dampier just impressed, bro. He is decisive. You don't see a lot of quarterbacks that's like that. Like, a lot of times when you see quarterbacks that have dual threat ability, you see what you saw in Boulder with Caden Salter this past weekend, where I have dual threat ability, but Coach Sherman wants me to keep my eyes down the field. I have dual threat ability, and even though I could take off and get 15 yards right now, Coach Sherman wants me to keep my eyes down the field. And when I say Devin Dampier is decisive, he is decisive. He's extremely decisive. He knows when to take off. He knows when to try to make plays. And then I think he also knows, you know, when to try to extend the play and look to throw the ball. So I think that's what you get in Devin Dampier. Definitely buying Utah stock. 100% buying Tennessee stock as well. Texas, I'm still buying Texas stock. I like that a lot of you guys are overreacting. Because that's what we're supposed to do as, you know, college football personalities. We're supposed to overreact. But geez Louise, some of the things you all feel about these teams are interesting, man. Extremely interesting. So, yeah, I'm still buying Texas stock, buying Miami stock. Let me get some more Miami stock. I hate to admit it, you know what I'm saying, because I wasn't very high on this team in the beginning. But yes, I'm certainly buying Miami stock, 100%. Ohio State, I was a little concerned about the offense. I'm not gonna lie. Hartline figured that out, but Patricia's defense was stellar. And Caleb Downs the best player in all of college football, right? And my computer is really bugged out right now. My apologies, the video isn't working. I got to figure out what's going on. Alrighty, teams that I am selling stock on. Alabama. You guys should have seen this one coming. They looked awful. I have no other words to explain but awful. Alabama looked terrible the last game that I seen them play in. I haven't seen them look this terrible, I couldn't tell you since when. That was bad. It looked like Florida State was the SEC team and Alabama was the ACC team. That's how bad it was. Yeah. I'm selling stock at the moment. You got 11 more games to play to prove me wrong. No question I'm selling stock. They hurt my feelings this past weekend. I was like, you know what? Let me see how Northwestern looks versus Tulane. And I was like, you know, my dog Preston Stone's there. Something that he don't do a lot is turn over the ball. And this weekend, what does he do? He turned over the ball. North Carolina, I'm out. I'm not buying no more stock. And I don't care how wrong I can be later on in the season. I am out. What I saw Monday was a disgrace. An absolute disgrace. It was a disgrace to the boosters, the donors, and the people who root for North Carolina football. It was a disgrace to them. It was a disgrace to Bill Belichick and his legacy. An absolute disgrace. That game was unwatchable Monday. And then a lot of you guys are going to get upset because Herbstreit is playing with the dog in the booth. But they getting dog walked. I might as well bring the dog out. That is my dog and, you know, play around a little bit, right? Yeah, I'm out. So I'm not buying anymore. And if I buy something for the rest of the season, you guys got the right to call me out. Kansas State. I'm selling the stock on them too. I can't do it. I wish you well. But nah. Nah. I'm out. And yeah, that's the last one. So let's get into this game preview and then we're gonna get out of here. I think this is a really good matchup. I think this is a sneaky good matchup for week 2. And while, Oklahoma and Michigan will get top billing, and while the Cyhawk game will get higher billing in this game, when I looked at Illinois' schedule and I said, what game scares you? And a lot of you will probably figure, some of the bigger Big Ten games that they played this year. The game that scared me most was this game because of the respect and the admiration that I had for Manny Diaz and, what he was able to do in his inaugural season at Duke for a guy whose name has kind of been ran through the mud. I was really impressed with the job Manny Diaz done in Durham. Now, I wasn't overly impressed with him after week 1, but I think there's a reason for the way Duke played in week 1. They look better in the second half. Darian Mensah certainly did as well. But I think sometimes, when you got a big game coming up, you try to be as vanilla as possible against a team you can beat. So I'm hoping that's what's it. But it's been 60 years since Illinois and Duke shared a field. They play a lot in college basketball. I know Illinois has had some success versus Duke in college basketball. But the series sits tied at a game apiece. Now they meet in Durham in a matchup that feels bigger than just week 2. And I think this is going to take some of you by surprise, but I believe both of these teams have playoff aspirations. Now, I don't have Duke in my college football playoff, but when I say playoff aspirations, I'm talking about on the cusp. I think Duke can be an on the cusp team because you're trying to figure it out in the ACC, right? You got Clemson. And then with Clemson lost, I know some other teams like, hey, they could be us. Louisville is, I think Louisville is the second. Louisville, I still think Clemson's the best team in the ACC, but I think Louisville is the second best team in the ACC. I really do. But then I think you got a host of teams that are right there for the third. Miami's right there. I think Duke is right there. Georgia Tech is right there, right? So I think both of these teams legitimately have playoff aspirations, right? Early for sure, but this game sets a tone for who's real and who's hanging around. So we're going to start off with Champaign, the team in Illinois, who I kind of feel a closeness to because my dog, all my dogs who are fans of teams, I always pay attention to. And when I have questions about a team, I always go to them. So like Jalen is an Illinois fan. He's not too far from Champaign. He goes to a host of games every year. And it's the same thing with BC, and it's the same thing for like Iowa and Toledo with D now. It's the same thing for, Oklahoma State with Boomers. The same thing for any team in the metro Atlanta area, for Moon, That's just the way it is. But, Illinois, open up with a statement, 52-3 domination of Western Illinois. Luke Altmeyer was exactly what he thought he would be. He was surgical, 17-21, 3 tutties. He was calm. He was efficient. Aidan Laughery added 101 yards on the ground, 2 scores. And then Gabe Jacas, one of the best defensive players in all of the country, not just this conference, not just this team, but in all of the nation. He had 2 sacks, right? I like that. That stood out to me. But, I think this team has identity that matters. Bret Bielema has built the program on the pillars of being a blue collar, like that lunch pail, we're going to work hard. That greater, metro Chicago area, right? And even though they're in Champaign, I still consider them the greater Chicago area. I think that's the pillars that this team has been built upon, right? I think they're tough. I think they're disciplined. I think they're adaptable. Offensive coordinator Barry Lundy Jr., you guys have heard me say that name a lot on the show. I think he deserves more respect for designing a balanced attack. I think it's efficient as well, and they can morph depending upon their opponent. They're going to take what the opponent going to give them. They're not afraid to run the rock. They're also not afraid to pass the rock. And I think when you got a guy like Luke Altmeyer, in my opinion, is an extremely clutch quarterback. I did not think he was that good when he was in Oxford. Not going to lie to you. Make no mistake about it. But I do believe that this kid has morphed into somebody that's going to be playing on Sundays. I think the world of Luke Altmeyer. I know you guys will probably say, well, look at the games you keep talking about the clutchness. Well, he went into Lincoln and had clutch moments in Lincoln. When Nebraska had every right to win that game, Luke Altmeyer said no. Same thing versus Rutgers. Luke Altmeyer said no. Same thing versus Purdue. And I know they were bad last year. But it's difficult playing a team that knows you because, Ryan Walters was the defensive coordinator there, right? And, dude, Luke Altmeyer, he's clutch. And not enough people are talking about how clutch this kid is. And I look at his development. I think he's a guy that can go to the Senior Bowl, and really light it up. And I always want to say Reese's Senior Bowl. It's not Reese's anymore. But I think he's a guy that can go there and truly light it up, and then he'll help his draft stock. I'm a fan of Luke Altmeyer. And when I look at the quarterbacks of the Big 12. And yes, there's some dynamic ones. You got, Drew Aller and Penn State. You got Julian Sayin. You got Dante Moore. Yes, I think there's a wealth of quarterbacks, but is there a quarterback I'm taking over Luke Altmeyer? Like, I'm a huge Drew Aller fan, but if his coaches, and, James Franklin and Andy Kotelnicki let him cook, I know Luke Altmeyer has the full trust of his staff. So I'm not sure there's a quarterback in that conference I'm taking over him. So like I said, he's extremely clutch. I like the connection that him and Barry London Jr. have. I was a little bit worried about the production that they lost last year in the wide receiver room and Pat Bryant and Franklin. But I think Hudson Clement's going to be all right. And I think another guy will emerge. They always will. And I think they'll be okay in the running game, even though, with Fegan and the kid Laughery that I mentioned earlier. Defensively, Aaron Henry is their defensive coordinator, and I think he's starting to figure it out. It was pretty rough in 2023. I think they finished, 96th in total defense in 2023. But, I think they were, definitely better in 2024. I like his multiple 3-4 looks, and I think it gives them an innate ability to disguise coverages and try to win the down and distance battle. What we here who like metrics in college football like to call success rate. They like to keep teams in bad success rate situations. So that's what I'm hoping that Illinois is able to do this game. So let's talk about Duke before I talk more about this game. So now, don't underestimate Duke just because they opened up against Elon and you weren't happy with their performance in the first half. I said it in the opening, I believe that they were trying to be as vanilla as possible on offense. I do like the guy, Jonathan Brewer. He keeps things simple but dangerous. He was at SMU before, and one thing I know that he's into is this tempo thing. He likes to snap the ball fast. He really likes to snap the ball fast. They want, and the purpose is the reason why Duke likes to go so fast. They want your defense to be vanilla, because if you don't have the ability to adapt and adjust to what they're doing, they're going to say in a base, personnel, but have different looks. And each of the time they go to the line of scrimmage, that tempo makes it really difficult to play defense. So I'm wondering, what does that look like? That the mind game between Jonathan Brewer, Duke's offensive coordinator, and the Illinois defensive coordinator, Aaron Henry. He's going to have to keep things super simple as well, because they go fast, and you try to practice against it, but you can't practice against that tempo. You just can't. So they're going to go fast. They're going to force defense to stay vanilla. And one of the things that SMU does really well, and I believe that, Jonathan Brewer brought this with him from SMU, the ability to utilize RPOs, right? And not just, base RPOs where, it's a run and as a pass option. Also read RPOs as well, when a quarterback has an ability to take off with the the run pass option as well. So I like what both of these teams have to bring to the table, especially on the offensive side of the ball. This is a really tough game to gauge. It really is. And I think here at CFB Nation, a lot of us have the I made my take. If I make a take, that's the hill that I'm dying on. So Illinois is the hill that I'm dying on, even though I've been highly, I've given Duke a lot of credit for what they've been able to do this year. The line, let me give you guys the line. Illinois is favored by 2.5 points, and the over-under has a total of 49.5. Odd makers expect a close tactical fight, and I agree 100%. So here's my call. I think Illinois has to have the ability to be better in the trenches. They got to win that war of attrition on the line of scrimmage. Series got to end in a kick, whether that's point after touchdown, whether it's a field goal, or whether it's a punt. On the road, and that atmosphere, you cannot turn the ball over, because they have a sneaky good crowd, I think. I think they have a fantastic crowd, to be honest with you. Duke has a lot of tempo, bro. I talked about the tempo. I talked about the RPOs that they like to use. It's just, if this is going to be as close as the odd makers say, I look at Darian Mensah, and I surely like a lot of what he brings at the quarterback position. But Luke Altmeyer, there's not too many quarterbacks in this country I'm taking over Luke Altmeyer in a clutch situation. So if this is a close game, give me Luke Altmeyer. So give me Illinois to barely win this game, but it's going to be a damn good one, and a game I'm truly excited to see this upcoming weekend. All righty. Shout out to everybody who made it to the end of this episode. Weird episode. We started late. My computer's acting fun. If it's time to get a new one, it's time to get a new one. As I always like to say, there are no more victories in a sport that survive in advance. That's why college football has the greatest regular season. And until next time, you all take care. Tomorrow, I will announce where we're going on week 2 of this tour. Like I said, you all take care. Governor of college football, we're going to recap ACC.
Hey, that's
Two
CJ
great
on
defensive
that
minds.
track.
They have to be better on that side of the ball.